Like a nice free.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the first Budget and Finance Committee of the new fiscal year. Today is Monday, July 24th. I'm Paul Krikorian, joined by my colleagues, Mr. Blumenfield, Mr. Bonin, and Mr. Koretz, and we are ready to begin. We're going to go ahead and take our public comment first. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Herman on all items. You have 3 minutes, followed by Mr. Previn on all items. You have 3 minutes or so. Mr. Herman?
Good afternoon and welcome back. It's about time we call some law and order on these unconstitutional and as applied violation and rules, because it's very apparent that the city of Los Angeles has instigated a number and numerous issues of censorship regarding public comment cards and our right of free speech. So on behalf of the public and the American people, I say on your behalf, fuck you, Jews. And then I go into the issue regarding Mr. Spindler. According to court documents, Spindler said that the drawings were a comment card, were, satire and basically protected political speech. However, fucking douchebags from the city of LA, Michael Fuhr, said, oh no, Mr. Spindler's cards are offensive. He's using cards to make a threat. What a moron. What a bunch of morons. And this is dated Monday, July 17th, 2017. City Hall critic strikes no deal, but accused of racial taunting. And best part about all this, you took his guns away. A man's right to defend himself under the Second Amendment. Pardon me, sir?
That was your
Oh, yeah, and then I go back to item number one, that fucking Jew, Mitch Englander, the bitch that's not here to talk about item number one, Cody West versus the city of Los Angeles. There's no reason to go into closed session. You could have had an open dialogue and give the man a fucking blank check. So his attorneys don't have to sit here and muscle around with wasted fucking time of public comment. But instead, budget boy, you'd rather not pay up. And on behalf of Spindler, I think you should settle now in mediation to pay up. The same way Michael Hunt, the Red Chief,
Get to the agenda item.
Michael Hunt talks about Cody West. He says white niggas should be able to park where they want, not be discriminated because you're fucking offensive, sleeping in your car or cruising around with no gas in your car. There's nothing unconstitutional about that, dumbass niggas.
You're not talking.
And then I'm going to item number six. No. Better. With my last 28 seconds. I like this one. Item number 8. Motion by Krikorian to report office finance. The dumb motherfucker doesn't know how to check and balance. That's the reason why you taxpayers are paying for the occupancy tax program, in summary, to measure nothing. That's the reason us dumb niggas walk around in the street homeless. And then they're going to Odom, not Odom, but item 9, CD14, that fat fuck O'Farrell. No, Weezer, okay, for the record.
Mr. Previn?
Thank you. It is Eric Previn from CD2, and welcome back, City Council. I note the absence of Mr. Englander today. I didn't catch the roll call, but for the record. Item 1 is the Cody Weiss matter, Mr. Hale. This one, it was unfortunately, the gentleman was ticketed. He wanted to challenge his ticket. He discovered that it was a Xerox employee doing the judging, so obviously that got reviewed by a court. They found in the favor of Mr. Weiss, and then the city appealed, and the appellate court found in the favor of Mr. Weiss. He deployed, in August of 2016, $722,000 legal dollars, so he'd already paid his ticket. So now, I don't know why we are going into a closed session, quite frankly. I know that this body tried to bring it up to the big court, California Supreme Court, and I believe it was not accepted. So I assume we're putting the finishing touches on the deal. But I don't understand why that's done in silence or in back room. That should be done out in front. And Englander, I'm sure, is not here today because, the DOT and Englander Knabian Allen is a big lobbyist. His uncle.
It has nothing to do with the agenda item.
No, Cody Weiss is the Xerox case, sir. That is reasonable to explain. So, I mean, you're welcome to quibble with me, but Wayne Garcia, Philip Wong, Slater Reynolds, all those folks commingle with the lobbyist for Xerox, which is Harvey Englander and his group. So I think that that's worth mentioning. I don't know. The other case, item number 3, is Magdalena DeSanto. That's an LA DOT case as well. These are the Vision Zero people, so they're busy. Item 4 is Ronald Gray. This is an employment retaliation. This one would blanch a typical resident's mustache because a guy blew the whistle on. They were taking federal dollars, misapplying them, and not getting the kind of stuff for anti-terrorist stuff that they were supposed to be doing. He said, this is a problem. He started saying it in 2000 and something, 10, and then he got severely retaliated against. And it's going to be a disaster. They've got a big lawyer on it. I think it's that guy, Matt McNicholas, who's a treasured partner. I don't know. I feel we'd have to do a little better job bringing these laundry legal matters out into the open so that folks can have a real say and we can raise our outrage about it.
Please hold this time. Mr. Herman, you're not going to disrupt this meeting. I'm trying to listen to Mr. Previn's comments. You will not make noise. You will not shout out. You will not clap. Sit quietly, or I'm going to ask you to leave.
And so that case of Ronald Gray was a devastating debacle. Personal protective equipment. Now, this is a thing that I'm constantly hammering on about at the Public Safety Committee, where Englander brings in gifts of various folks. So it's hard for us to keep track of where the federal money is going when we're getting gifts of shields all over the place, Mr. Hale. As you know, shields are important, but to have gifts from people unspecified is murky. Item 8 is obviously the parking occupancy tax. Nobody loves parking occupancy audits more than Mr. Koretz, and that's why he has asked that we finally look at this. And it is, it's disturbing, if truth be told. I'm disturbed by it because in my district, the parking occupancy tax and also the transit occupancy taxes were kind of overlooked. It's to the mayor's kind of discretion. There's a lot of murkiness. Mr. P.J. Shemtube is a good resource on just how murky it can be, but it does not bode well for us. And obviously, number 9 is something to celebrate finally. This is the Zacatean group is getting a couple of 2001 GMC vans, which I do support. I just hope that Mr. Englander does not impound them because these are quite old, these vehicles, and it does look as if it's the kind of size and scope that you could move nicely into if you were inclined. So with that, I guess we could head for the public comment. Is that what we're doing, or you want me to finish on the items? Yeah,
well, this is all included. I actually inadvertently gave you an extra minute because of holding your time, so go ahead with your general public comment now, but it should have been included.
So I'll try to do the general public comment very briefly. Voters approve things like Prop HHH, we've written about it for City Watch, like Prop K. In my neighborhood, Studio City, where Mr. Krikorian rules, we had a Prop K event that happened in silence. It's a problem because the residents are going to be severely impacted by the plan, and what the request to the mayor is to simply retake the meeting. It was called an LVNOC, I won't get into the weeds, so that the community can actually feel and look and have some information before a decision about their neighborhood moves forward, even though it is at a very early stage, to be fair. And I do appreciate all that you've done to keep it quiet, but we want to bring up the volume on that. Thank you.
All right, members, I would have proposed items 6, 8, 9, and 10 for consent approval. And now that we've taken comment on those matters, if there's no objection or questions on those matters, we can advance them forward.
I'd like to pull number 8.
Okay. Anything on 6, 9, or 10, members? Okay, so 6 and 9 will be approved by this committee. Item 10 will be noted and filed. That will bring us next into our closed session items. So unless the city attorney has a request for preference, we'll proceed with item number 2. I'm sorry, item number 1. All right, thank you for your patience. We are back in open session now, and we will proceed with item number 7.
Item number 7 is City Attorney Reports and Ordinances and Board of Public Works Report relative to amending the Los Angeles Administrative and Municipal Codes to form the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety, and Los Angeles Department of Transportation report relative to renewing electric line and pipeline franchises. The Public Works and Gang Reduction and Transportation Committees approved the city attorney reports and draft ordinances and took other actions.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. Fernando Campos, Executive Officer with the Board of Public Works. I'm joined here by Uduak Intuk, our Petroleum Administrator, and Ted Jordan, our Legal Counsel. The items before you today are four items in total. The first two ordinances before you, it's report number R170178, amends the Los Angeles Administrative Code section to properly transfer the function from the Department of Transportation over to the Board of Public Works. That item has been heard by the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee along with the Transportation Committee, and they're recommending to approve that item upon your consideration as well. The second item that's before you within this council file is an ordinance to amend the Los Angeles Administrative Code along with the Municipal Code that would functionally transfer the administrative function for Petroleum Administrator from the CAO's office to the Board of Public Works, which is where Mr. Intuk's office is located. The third item is another separate ordinance that amends or proposes to amend the Administrative Code Section 5.500, which is the real estate or the real property trust fund, by removing the word oil and also public right-of-way. I'm sure that your committee will have a lot of questions regarding this item or this ordinance, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that may be posed by your committee to us. And the last item that's part of this file is a Board of Public Works report that was submitted to your council for consideration that has 5 separate recommendations. Items number 2, 4, and 5 have been considered by 2 prior committees, Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee along with Transportation, and those items are being, in essence, being completed by the ordinances that are before you. Recommendations number 1 and 3 have not been heard by either committee. They deferred those items to your committee for consideration since there is a fiscal impact. I'd like to just note for the record, item number 1 or recommendation number 1 in the Board of Public Works report is our response to the formation of the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration. Your council has agreed to fund this office and also gave us 5 position authorities during the fiscal year 17-18 budget. The funding is for 6-month funding for 5 positions, and we are excited to bring on board the folks for that function. However, it was only 6-month funding, and we do need to move forward with a lot of the activities that are being asked for and reports that are being asked for from the Petroleum Administrator. Nonetheless, we can have a discussion on that item if you'd like. However, I believe item number 1 or recommendation number 1 has in essence been completed through the budgetary process, so it can be removed from the report. And then item number 3 is has to do with the recommendation number 3 in the Board of Public Works report has to do with the amendments of the Administrative Code Section 5.50. And in that recommendation, what we're saying after the policy discussion has been made by your committee and ultimately City Council as a whole is that if you do remove the word oil and public right-of-way, there is a fiscal impact, and we will defer to the CAO's office in terms of what that fiscal impact will mean. And in addition to that, there was a request by the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee to come up with ways to fund the function of petroleum administration. Our proposal is to use the petroleum franchise fees that come into the city, not to exceed 10% of that bucket, and we can fund the petroleum function using that 10%. That is subject to your council's consideration whether you are going to amend the administrative code or not. If you do not, then at that point, that 10% could be considered moot, but we will answer any questions that you may have. So the last part, if your council decides not to amend the administrative code section 5.50, the 10% that we're proposing to fund the function, we can have discussions through the normal budget deliberation process if you'd like, or if you would like to reserve that separate funding for the Petroleum Administration Office, you could do so by recommending a revision to the administrative code 5.50. I know I threw out a lot, but just in summary, the first 2 ordinances that do that does and effectuate the functional transfer from DOT to CAO over to the Board of Public Works. Those are 2 ordinances that we are recommending your approval. And moving on to council, the ordinance that changes the real property trust fund We will answer any questions if your council wants to have a deliberation on that. And then item number 4, which is the Board of Public Works report, whether you allocate 10% of that revenue source code for the function of petroleum administration.
Mr. Fritz.
Yes, so I would like to see us dedicate the revenue to guarantee that the office is funded. So to do that, do we pass this as it is? I'm not clear, or do we need to add that as an amendment?
Your council would have to ask our Office of City Attorney to make an amendment to the proposed ordinance that's before you. That's not being considered before you right now. That's part of the separate report. So in order for us to do that, you would have to ask our City Attorney's Office to make a revision to the current proposed Administrative Code 5.500.
And if that's appropriate, I would move that at the end of this item. Also, what impacts does oil drilling have on our efforts to reduce climate change, and what's the most environmentally friendly way for us to drill to ensure we have the minimal environmental impact?
I can answer that question. This is Uduak Joe, and took the Petroleum Administrator. I'm actually looking at that as part of the health study as the environmental impacts. Typically, when a drilling occurs for a well, that's the most intensive activity and energy-intensive time, and you have a diesel-powered drill rig that is going, it might go for 3 weeks to 8 months at a time to drill a well, depending on how long and how deep. Alternative measures that could mitigate some of the emissions would be reduced truck trips, looking at electric-powered rigs, looking at capping emissions that may come out during the well, or having a strong ventilation or vapor recovery system can reduce that. But the drilling activity is the most intense, even though there is a 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week production facility that is pumping and processing crude, water, natural gas, and dirt that's coming up, or soils from the wells. But we haven't fully done that analysis. But I am considering that as part of a separate council file.
On the third one, in terms of the changing the oil, where are the oil pipelines? How would that be distributed geographically?
We have several thousand miles of pipeline within the city, with approximately 43 franchisees or different corporations or LLC companies. The portion that's in question is really the Southern California gas portion of the fund. Approximately $16 million last year came from Southern California Gas, and 16 million, and then approximately 4 million were the other 43 pipeline franchises. So the SoCal Gas is a larger fiscal piece of it.
So there's $20 million in play.
20 million in total, yes, approximately.
So that's the hit to the general fund is 20 million.
No, the impact, if I could, there's 2 different parts. So we have the oil franchise, petroleum franchise, and then we have the other franchise that comes in. We have 16 million from the oil, 4 is the other. The 4 other is going to be distributed as is right now, as the administrative code requires. The oil, if you were to remove that, then the fiscal impact to the general fund would be approximately $8 million. So currently, the current administrative code requires us to split 50% of that revenue, that's $16 million, to the general fund. The other half goes to city council, and that half is divided into 2 buckets, 25% equally distributed among all council districts. The other 25% is distributed among council districts within the square footage in that council district. The challenge that Mr. Ook is illustrating is that if you were to consider the proposed revision to the administrative code as written, it would be very, very difficult for us to figure out what that distribution portion is from the SoCal Gas Company franchise agreement, simply because we use a percentage of revenues, not the square footage. And so if you were to move forward in this case, our report recommends that you distribute that 50% equally across all council districts, as opposed to doing the 25-25 split that is currently recommended in the ordinance right now. Otherwise, we're going to spend a lot of time trying to figuring out the square footage. That may require additional time and effort. Currently, Mr. Intuk is by himself. We are looking at hiring staff to help him. The current budget allows us to hire individuals in January. However, we are making some sacrifices within the Board of Public Works to hire 2 high-level individuals within the next month and a half, so that we can start the process of looking at what the impact is going to be. The other 3 remaining positions will be placed on vacancy or on hold until we can identify other general fund savings so that we can onboard those 3 remaining positions. Again, that decision is an internal decision so that we can provide staff resources to Mr. Intuk, who has been with us for nearly a year as a one-person shop. So we believe that dedicating that resource to him now, as opposed to waiting till January, is in the city's best interest.
So the hole in the general fund that would be caused by this would be $4 million?
The whole would be about $8 million.
Forever,
Right.
ongoing year after year.
So what we're saying is, if your council decides to go in this direction, it's a policy discussion that you will have, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions. But if you do move in this direction, one thing that we would like to do is to make sure that if you move in this direction, that at least 10% of that revenue source fund would be allocated for the petroleum administration function, so that in the future, his resources are dedicated and that we can move forward not only with the methane gas study, but also health impact risk, renewing the franchise that right now currently we're on borrowed time. We had all 43 franchise agreements that were renewed for a 12-month period. Most of them were renewed about 6 months ago. The others were renewed about a month ago. So we really have about 11 months in total on the high end to renew all franchise agreements, and that is becoming very difficult with a one-person shop at this point.
And I certainly recognize the importance of the work that your office is doing, you are doing,
One person.
and the need to assist you in getting more people to do that work. And I'm pleased that we're moving forward with sort of the implementing ordinance and getting going, but I think we really need to have a deep look at all of, not just using a percentage, but what are the resources that you really need to do this the most effectively? And what we've done, like what we did with the ratepayer advocate, and if you'll recall, and other things that we've done is we get the principal decision maker, the head person, the policy maker in that position, and then say, okay, now that you're in that position and you've seen it, what do you need? And give us a really comprehensive look at what the resources are and what the potential sources for funding for those resources might be. And I would hope that we would engage in that process maybe through the FSR or through the ordinary budget process. I can't support a change in language that would lead to an $8 million hole in the budget without any idea of how we make that hole up. So I would not be supportive of that change to section
5.500.
Thank you. I do think it's important that we move forward with approving the draft ordinances as the CLA had recommended, and I think that it's important that we have a deeper look at what your budget needs are, and I would urge us to do so with the first FSR. But setting aside a percentage of revenues that I don't think we should be tinkering with right now anyway is probably something that is probably not the approach I would suggest. I would rather have it go through the ordinary budget process and compare with our other priorities, if that makes sense. Mr. Kress.
So first FSR, when are we talking about?
First FSR should come to this committee probably during October.
I think that's a rational approach to it.
That's all I ever strive for. I don't strive for correct anymore. Just rational. It's good enough. All right. So does that seem reasonable, members? Okay. Do we need to delineate that any deeper, Mr. Williams? So we'll be approving the draft ordinances for R17-0178 and R17-0179. Everybody jump in if I go astray here. And we'll receive and file the deletion of the word oil in R17-0177. We'll receive and file that. And then we'll request a budget proposal for the office within the context of the next FSR.
Okay.
That makes sense?
And I'm sorry, the budget request for the FSR would be coming from the Board of Public Works?
I imagine so.
We would give our opinions to the CAO's office, who could then include it into the FSR. Then, of course, CAO would take
Yeah.
their independent analysis and give you their opinions in terms of what they believe is correct
Yeah.
or not correct.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Without objection, then, that will be the action of the committee.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Okay, and so that brings us then to item number 8.
Item number 8 is the motion, Kretz-Krikorian, relative to a report from the Office of Finance with an update on its responses to the recommendations in the Controller's 2012 audit of the parking occupancy tax program, a summary of measurable outcomes of those efforts, and a summary of efforts Finance has taken to ensure that the city is efficiently and equitably collecting all parking occupancy tax revenue due to the city from all parking lot operators.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Poon, Principal Tax Compliance Officer, and I have Steve Tanashev, Senior Tax Auditor. And just to point out that we share the Council's interest in this matter, and proactive measures are underway that will be presented in a report back. We are aware there is a 45-day deadline, and we are taking proactive measures to identify new data sources to assist with the detection efforts to address the Controller's audit. But we don't have a report at this time.
Okay. Mr. Kretz wanted to ask some questions on this item, I think.
So what are we doing in general to increase efficiency since we first started looking at this issue, and what are we doing to take steps so that this doesn't wind up being an ongoing issue?
Right now we're working with another company called Pondera that actually they use the data that we provide to them, where they can use their algorithms and their other calculations to help us identify some inefficiencies or some areas of improvement in the way that we collect the parking occupancy taxes. And we're currently meeting with them so they can help us address those issues.
And what have we done to, in particular, identify the lots that we weren't collecting anything from, that were sort of hidden from us, and then to make sure that they actually collect actively and take the proactive steps that they should, like accepting credit cards in addition to just cash?
The city has contracted the parking network to conduct audits on these lots, and we've had them contracted since about 2006 or so. So their job is to go out and do observational audits and submit reports to us, which helps us create audit assessments and start the audit process. So the parking network is currently still under contract, and again, part of their job is to go out, look for laws that are not reporting or under-reporting, and helps us with the audit efforts.
So they've been with us since 2006?
About, yes.
So we did this item in 2012 because we found that there were a number of lots that weren't paying anything.
Right,
so what have they done since to improve their effectiveness?
Since then, they have hired more people, and we've actually submitted more audits, better audit penetration, and the amount of recovery has also increased, to my knowledge.
So why don't we have an actual report, a written report on this?
Right, within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, then
Yes, within the 45-day deadline that we were given.
Okay. Well, then I probably don't need to ask any further questions. We'll follow up once we see the actual report.
Okay, very good. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for refreshing this issue, Mr. Kretz, because it's been lingering for a long time. Okay, so on item number 8 then, so should we hold this in committee then, or?
I would think so.
No, I think we go ahead and approve it so that they can finish the report, and then the report will come back, right? So without objection, we'll go ahead and approve the item then.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, if there's no objection, I'd like to reconsider item 7. The action I recommended was to receive and file ordinance R17-0177 with regard to the word oil and the real property trust fund. What I'd prefer to do, if that makes sense to you, rather than dealing with that with finality at this point, is to hold that ordinance in committee so that we move forward with the others, and we'll just go ahead and hold that one here for further consideration.
Sure.
If there's no objection, that will be the action of the committee. So is there any other item before the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Mr. Kretz, welcome back. Good to have you.